Good morning, Mel, and thank you for joining us for these filmings of these Collective Voices videos and the resources that we're putting together to create some more support and resources available for people, friends and family who are caring for people going through suicidal crisis. So yeah, good morning and thank you for coming along.
Good morning, Tynan. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for the invitation. It's very important that we expand the resources available for those with lived experience and their family members. So it's nice to be here.
Absolutely. No, thank you. We really appreciate your time. Just wondering if we could just start off just by framing up a little bit of context around your personal lived experience as being a carer for us, please.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I come with a couple of decades of experience of being part of a family that cares for someone with mental health and suicide concerns. So I guess what that looks like for me is very different across various settings that we've needed to navigate. So my role supporting a loved one who has been in suicidal distress has been different to the role that other family members play for our loved ones. So my role essentially has been listening to what my loved one has to say and then advocating on his behalf a lot of time. That takes a special kind of understanding of a system that you're stepping into, as well as a special understanding of the loved one that you're advocating on behalf. So it's not an easy role for families to share the load, share the responsibility of caring and handing that over to other people who may need to intervene due to certain risks and behaviours.
When you talk about sort of navigating the system, I don't imagine that was skills that you already had. Did you already have those skills, or how did you learn them in the context of being an advocate for someone that you were caring for?
How did I learn them?
Yeah.
It's called life experience. I guess at an early age, I accepted a responsibility of caring for my brother, who's 3 years my junior. And that, I guess, journey began when our family went through an early separation and divorce. And so I acknowledged the big sisterly responsibility of how do I get through this, but how do I also support my younger brother through the challenges that he may face, when I could see that he couldn't really understand what was going on. So that journey within itself opened doors to various systems, and I guess I had to learn to observe and listen and take on different languages, if you wish, for the settings that our family were navigating. And I acknowledged that my mum and my dad didn't necessarily have the same set of skills that I had. We all carry a different set of skills with us as someone who cares for another person. So I guess I felt a moral duty, but it's not a heavy load when you're doing it as a meaningful contribution to somebody else's life. So it's, like I said, an early challenge that I accepted and said, okay, so this is my life, and you know, I'm happy to do what I can. So
what a beautiful act of support for a sibling to step up and really just take that on board and recognize and go, hey, this is my space, I'm going to need to be involved in here. And you talked about sort of learning a number of different languages along the journey, and I've heard other people use the analogy that when supporting someone, they have to put on a variety of masks to adapt to different settings for you. Did you have a similar experience to that? in terms of like when you'd go to different places? Like, how did you prepare and know sort of which role you would take with each of them? Or is that just learnt or intuition?
Yeah. Look, I generally like to use the word put on a different hat, I'll say, as opposed to a mask. When I have ever done any advocacy work on behalf of my loved one, it's been with the understanding that I have listened to him first. So whatever the circumstance, whatever the landscape that we're navigating at the time, it's supporting him as a person first. It's supporting his voice first. It's supporting his needs first. And whilst I may not be somebody who speaks the language of an environment that we're stepping into, I can certainly not feel ashamed to support the voice of my loved one in that environment. So I'm happy to wear the different hats.
Okay. No, that makes complete sense. And again, you just sound like a very beautiful, like caring person just to take that on. You speak about it as though it's just like it's just part of life for you, which is
yeah, it's absolutely it's an intentional life purpose that that I am living now. I've had to acknowledge lots of hurt, heartache. There's lots of things that I've seen that I haven't been happy with, but there's also been a process of forgiveness. And I think as people, we need to understand that we're working with other humans who are never perfect and environments are never perfect. But I think if we can approach these situations with love and respect and intentional care and support, I think we're moving forward as a human race. And that's how I like to approach it.
It's a great outlook on the situation. So within all the different sort of roles and the hats that you were wearing, it sounds like that without that there would have been a impact on yourself as well. I just want to talk about that. Like, what role, like throughout that role, how did it impact your life, and how did you manage the impact it had on your life? Did you adapt, or what did you do for that?
Yeah, so there's intentional expectations and communication that I've had to have over the years with my immediate family. So I acknowledge, as someone who possibly hasn't navigated things well in the past, I've had an experience of my own, issues with self-care. I've had to learn balance and what that means in my life. I have worked in organisations who haven't really known how to support my needs as a carer. And, there's a genuine framework that needs to happen to support people in general who care for people. So I guess I've navigated different waters that haven't been so smooth. And then so from doing that, I've been able to step back, acknowledge the situation, acknowledge what my needs are as a mum, a partner, a daughter, whatever hat we want to wear at the time. But there's an experience that allows you to set some firm expectations and to have intentional conversations around what I need as a person, as a carer. And it might be having an intentional conversation with my children. Mum's not available as much today. I have this and this happening, and I need to commit my time to someone else today. So it's just having that daily communication with others around what my capacity is. And there shouldn't be any shame in that as a carer, as a caregiver, or as a caring person, full stop. I think setting firm, clear boundaries is what's needed.
Yeah, definitely. And that strategic approach that you take to every day is a great way to set up life in general, whether or not you're caring for someone or just trying to achieve something or just live a general life. I just want to come back to like the workplace. So what role has your workplace played in your life as a carer in terms of, have they been supportive? Have they created more challenges? And yeah, just wanted to know if we could speak about that for a moment.
Being able to work as a carer gives meaning to my own life. So it's vitally important that workplaces take responsibility to know how to care for me as someone who cares for someone else. I guess there's a natural transaction that needs to take place, and that requires me as a carer to be open and respectful with what I need as an employee or as a colleague, to share openly and shamelessly about the role that I have and the role that I play in a dynamic team. My current workplace, I couldn't give more credit to. They are incredible with their understanding in the work that I do as part of a team member, as someone with lived experience. A workplace needs to be open and mindful of their employees, the life that their employees have at work and outside of work. And if there can be an open dialogue about what that looks like for each employee, or if there's policies that support that as a framework, I think we're coming a long way.
Yeah, definitely. They sound like really good characteristics to have a place where it is open and they're mindful and have that connection with the people who work there. So in terms of when you've been working in a workplace and you've had that support around you, like you mentioned, open and mindful workplace, I'm just wondering for people out there who might not feel comfortable in their workplace or might not feel that supported, perhaps they haven't had the conversations that you've had, what would be your guidance, like your steps that you recommend people could take to have that, to take that proactive approach to laying down what's going on with them, and also just to help to let their needs be known?
I think workplace culture, there's opportunities to make way to provide supportive environments for employees. I think having recreational items, such as in lunchrooms, we might have journaling paper, we might have, creative resources available for our employees to simply just reflect upon their day, and moments of opportunity for them to reflect on, if they can't necessarily communicate with others what's going on in their life, that they can actually take some moments in downtime, intentionally spending some time journaling or, having moments of opportunity just to have general conversations about what's going on in their world, in their life. As an individual, I have learned to actually take my journal with me wherever I go. I have an intentional strategy if I'm having a big day, or I need to reflect on how grateful I am at the moment. I will simply just write down 5 reasons of why I'm so grateful in my life, and it seems to bring me back to center my day. There's lots of reasons for me to find that as a carer.
That's beautiful self-awareness to have and to plan out. And you sound extremely strategic in how you plan your days out, and they're really good skills to have. When it comes to self-care for you, how has that played in your role as a carer, and has it evolved over your experience of being a carer from the start to where you are now? What was the journey like for that in terms of your self-care?
The journey of my own self-care has been extremely messy. I have had
Thanks for the honesty.
Yeah. There's part of us all who chooses a life of service for others to find the hard places of struggle that you walk within yourself in order to give to others. So I've seen the worst of the worst. I've experienced vicarious trauma in the workplace. I have seen it in colleagues that I work alongside. It's having self-care is not an easy thing to find. There are lots of things that you can do in order to make yourself feel better. However, it's the pathway is finding them. So there's an intention about acknowledging yourself, that self-care is that you're worthy of self-care even. So, navigating that experience in itself has been challenging over the years, because it's always been, I'll just give to others and then I don't have to look at my own self. However, that self-discovery journey is well worth the taking, I'll say. But it has been a challenging journey, yeah.
For sure. And throughout your experience caring, how have you managed to, I guess, create a boundary around self-care versus caring for someone else? Like when there's times that you need to say, hey, now I can't care for you as good as I want. Like, how has that played out? Have you been able to navigate that and create a system around doing that?
Yeah, I have. But again, it hasn't come easily. There's a self-awareness once you have worked out that you're worthy enough of self-care, your ability to sow into the lives of others. There's a framework or a formula that you draw upon and acknowledge that some people, have to find their own level of self-care as well, and that I don't need to be responsible for everyone's care. So yeah, just being self-aware and acknowledging my own importance has allowed for me then to care for others more deeply and respectfully as well, because it's not necessarily what I want for them, it's what they want for them. So definitely. I think that's important.
And in terms of that self-care aspect, when you're caring for others, how do you handle that with the other person so they have their expectations around your level to support them in times when you need to care for yourself more? How does that work?
So placing boundaries around the level of time that I spend with others, prioritizing time for myself is important. Maintaining a daily routine is helpful. It might even be leaving a note for someone on a bench, trying to communicate the best way that I can, because I've left the house before others have got up for the day. So I guess it's being intentional about the ways I communicate with others around me, and really ensuring that my own self-care is modeled to others as well, and having healthy boundaries.
And how do you navigate when boundaries are being pushed, or if it came to a moment where you perhaps need to do something that isn't sort of aligning with your own self-care at the moment? Have you had any examples like that?
There's been certainly so many times where I've had to call the stop it, I don't like it card. Yeah, I guess, I suppose just over the years, I've learned to find my own voice, and using that verbal communication or that written communication. It might even be sending my loved one a text message prior to me getting there and saying, I only have this much time today, to spend with you. I'd love to hear what happens when I have to leave, or, so really just intentionally trying to communicate with others around what my day is going to look like.
Sounds like great transparency to have, and to help protect yourself.
Yeah.
So within the space of carers, I've heard stories about people who've been supporting other people that have had to at times somewhat take over the power balance to keep people safe and put sort of things around and interventions in place for people. And often people have this concern about being worried about doing that, and the person that they're wanting to support may develop resentment or anger towards them. Just wondering, have you experienced anything like that, or have you got anything you'd like to comment around that?
Always and every time. It was a challenge.
Okay.
I don't even know how to answer that, to be honest, without, I guess, to be real, there will always be power imbalance in this world. What has helped me and my loved one and our family step through challenging power disproportion has been willing to set that boundary from the beginning, willing to have listened to our loved one before we step into a space that we know may be challenging, and to really have on board our loved one's wishes, so that we can then articulate in the places that they can't. So we're not speaking from an emotional setting. It's more so gathering insight around our loved one's needs, and then being able to articulate our loved one's needs to the right people, and then to be able to hand that over to them and say, how can we help you in your environment navigate this so that you will take care of our loved one? So it's really understanding transference, if that makes sense. But it's always about the needs of our loved one. It's not about what we would want or what we necessarily would think is best.
And that power imbalance and that self-determination thing, it sounds like it's always been on your mind and part of a motivator for you of having those discussions, like right from the early start, and really wanting to voice what he has to say, and sometimes if voice what they have to say, and even if it's places that they're not perhaps able to speak it, you try and work with them to bring that up. It sounds like a really, really good process to go through.
Yeah, I guess that has been the challenge of experiencing trauma from an early age. So acknowledging that, there's certain reasons why people, act, think, and feel the way that they do, and being intentionally aware that the environments that we step through and that people step through is not necessarily going to have the time to listen or have the capacity to deal with deeper issues that may be going on.
Okay. Within the world of suicide and suicide prevention, there's a lot of myths, misconceptions, and stigma that sit around the space. And we often hear stories about carers trying to advocate for people and coming up with a lot of stigma from family, other friends, different circles of life. What's your experience has been around stigma, and how have you handled things that have come up?
I try and just take each situation as it comes, and try and intentionally communicate back to those people some facts about the situation. So obviously being mindful of not oversharing information and respectfully communicating information that's not mine to share. I would generally just be, I guess, open and interested in having a deeper conversation who may be stigmatizing at the time. So, you know, I might reflect the comment and, you know, be open to having further conversations later about, you know, in a timely opportunity where we could discuss things more.
Great.
So I probably wouldn't get into the nitty-gritty of a stigmatizing comment at that time, because it's not timely or useful to anybody.
Ends up just being an argument type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. So you've had many years experience being like a carer and supporting a loved one. Just wondering, like, if you were to frame up the biggest lesson that you've learnt, or if you were to go back and talk to yourself in the early days and say, take this on board, this is important for you to know, what would your message be for yourself or for someone new out there who's coming on board and stepping up to care for someone?
Yeah, I'd say it's fine to have an intention to want to fix everything, but just take things as they come, slow down, listen to your loved one that you're caring for, try and articulate their message the best that you can, and be okay with not having to complete everything. It's just okay.
Mm-hmm. Sort of go in it for the long run. Don't just try and and then sort of then stop the game kind of thing.
It is absolutely. It's a journey of perseverance.
What's been your keys to persevering? Like you mentioned about your self-care and things in the past, but is there something else internal that drives you?
People drive me. You know, I guess what drives me is living a meaningful life. And so if that means that I can have a moment of opportunity that changes somebody's life in a positive way, then why not try to do that?
Yeah, that's great. So in your day-to-day life, how does your lived experience of like suicide, being like a carer, how does that influence like what you do in your like work, what you do in life, how you parent? How does it play out in your world?
My lived experience has become my life. It is my living experience. What I once thought as a young person, taking on that young person informal carer's role has shaped my life in ways that I would never have imagined. And I would still accept the challenging times as part of that I wouldn't have the insight as someone with lived or living experience of caring for someone had I not experienced every single part of the way. So I think trying to remain mindful that the whole story is important. It's not just the sentences and the paragraphs and the chapters that make up to now. It's all of it. And that's what allows me to live a life of perseverance.
That's great. It's great. What's been your proudest moment as a carer and things that you've experienced?
Probably, look, there's deeply profound moments that make me proud to be a carer, but there's also the little simple wins that are as equally as important. They're seeing the changes that happened with my loved one over the years, the things that I would once need to articulate on his behalf where he was able to do that himself. I'm like, yes.
That's great.
You know, it's those moments that count. And there's lots of them. There's been lots of them. So, you know, if there would be anything that I would share with other carers is please don't lose sight of the capacity and the impact that you're making for those that you support. And you don't have to be in a formal caring role to experience those moments. Just be proud of the people that you're supporting and be okay for them to be encouraged along the way. And you'll reflect on those moments.
What a nice message to give people out there, like around that, about some practical steps and things to look forward to. Just wondering, is there anything else that you'd like to speak about in terms of your lived experience of being a carer that we haven't spoken about today?
Just that I think, it's important to acknowledge that this is really challenging work at times. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it's not without intentional drive to want to make other people's lives extraordinary. So, I guess for any carer out there, it's an important role, and I hope that you find those little moments of gold that you see along the way.
Awesome. Well, Mel, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your experience. Your story is one of strategic precision and one of love for a family member, and really just wanting to make sure that their voice is heard, and just staying focused on that. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure that your story is going to help a lot of people out there who get to watch this content and hear your story and hear your messages about practicalities, and even just the one about hope and optimism for the future and taking those small wins. So Mel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Tynan, and thank you for what you're doing, because having these conversations is, that's the glitter that allows for these conversations to reach other people. So without interviews and conversations like this, the message would stay within. It wouldn't be out there to share. So Definitely. Good job for you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Tynan.